We all just need to listen. Joining me now is Congressman Jamie Raskin. He led the second impeachment trial of Donald Trump, and he's now the ranking Democrat on the House Oversight Committee. You have thought a lot about Donald Trump, and you have studied him a lot. You've been so involved in holding him accountable. When he said this week, if they're beating me, go down and indict them, and some of the pronouncements he's made over the weekend, I've heard that as kind of his authoritarian impulses getting worse. How do you hear them?
Well, the role of the government, in his view, is to advance his political fortunes and destroy his political enemies. So what would a second term look like? It would look a lot like Vladimir Putin in Russia. It would look a lot like Viktor Orban in Hungary. Illiberal democracy, meaning democracy without rights or liberties or respect for the due process system, the rule of law. And in fact, there's not much democracy left to it because their position is that they don't accept the integrity of any election where they lose. And that is a hallmark of an authoritarian party. They don't accept elections that don't go their ways. They refuse to disavow political violence. They embrace political violence as an instrument for obtaining power. And then everything flows from the will of a charismatic politician, and that is Donald Trump in their book. So we're clearly headed into a completely different form of government than any of us would recognize as continuous with the past. Right-wing authoritarian government in league with Putin, Xi, Orban, Bolsonaro,
Putin
you name
and
it.
Xi and Orban, and those are some serious authoritarian dictators out there, but they're people, it sounds like you're saying people should look at if they're wondering what a second Trump term would look like.
Those are the people that Donald Trump and his family do business with. Remember, his son-in-law brought back $2 billion from Saudi Arabia, from Mohammed bin Salman. He pocketed that after 4 years of rendering favors to Saudi Arabia, including covering up the assassination, dismemberment, drawing and quartering of a Saudi American journalist for the Washington Post, and rendering all kinds of favors to Saudi Arabia. Well, multiply that times every authoritarian despot on earth, and that's what we're getting with Donald Trump, because they've made relationships with every autocratic, plutocratic, kleptocratic regime on earth. And they don't pretend to have any program for the American people. It's just about restoring Donald Trump to power. They literally didn't have a platform that they adopted last time around, which tells you what? Their platform is whatever Donald Trump dictates to them on any particular day. And we see our colleagues in Congress just taking orders from Donald Trump on everything from shutting down the government to impeaching Joe Biden for nothing.
I did want to ask you about one of the specific things. There was some reporting over this weekend in the New York Times about his immigration plans. And none of this is really surprising given what he's done in the past, but it described it as preparing to round up undocumented people already in the United States on a vast scale and detain them in sprawling camps while they wait to be expelled. I mean, there are a lot of things in history that reminds me of. What did you think of when you read that story?
Well, of course, there's been an anti-immigrant impulse in America going back to the beginning with the Alien and Sedition Acts and the attempts to politicize and demonize foreigners to the country. Of course, the rounding up of Japanese Americans during World War II. So he wants to pick up on that strain, and that is a purely authoritarian program. I mean, they really have two programs. One is that, and the other is to pass what Mike Johnson wants, a national ban on abortion rights for American women with no exceptions for rape or incest. But they understand how deeply unpopular that is, so they're trying to downplay that for now. The cat's got their tongue. They don't want to talk about it. But of course, that will rise to the top the moment they think they can get it passed.
So let me ask you about Speaker Mike Johnson, who you know pretty well, it sounds like. He did release his two-step plan to keep the government open yesterday. No deep spending cuts, which some of the right wing want, but no funding for Israel and Ukraine. I haven't seen Democratic leadership make a pronouncement about what they think of it. The White House has kind of criticized it. What do you make of it? Is this something that could possibly be, does it have any legs?
Well, we haven't been able to study that new Republican plan yet. And obviously, we want to do everything in our power to keep the government open. So we're serving the American people. The problem within the Republican caucus is that they're caught in a double bind in two directions, right? If they go to try to fund each appropriation bill separately, then the MAGA right starts pasting all of this extreme right-wing graffiti on it. So there's anti-abortion stuff, there's anti-LGBTQ stuff, there's anti-DEI stuff, all of that. And then there are about a dozen Republicans who can't vote for that because they're in Biden districts and they won't go along with it. And they know
18 of them.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically signing their own political defeat by doing that. However, if they go for a clean continuing resolution, which is clearly the way to do it, then you get Chip Roy and the Freedom Caucus saying, no, this doesn't create the slap.
So are we, I mean, it's hard you're not running the Republican caucus, but we only have 5 days here.
Yeah.
Should the public be preparing for a shutdown?
Well, the best hope is that they want to give their new guy, Mike Johnson, some reprieve. I mean, they have put someone in who they think appeals to the common denominator within the caucus, which is a kind of theocratic agenda. And some of them are saying, well, he's like, the backup quarterback who comes in the fourth quarter, so don't blame him for everything that's happened. Give him a break here and go with what he wants. But the plan seems strange to me, but I'll reserve judgment on it. And, we're trying to operate with unity in our caucus behind Hakeem Jeffries and our leadership, because it's complicated enough with the Republicans falling apart on a weekly and daily basis. So if it's something that our leadership thinks they can work with, it's something that I imagine most Democrats will say we'll swallow for now.
We'll see. It could be a 5 days. So I want to ask you about Mike Johnson, because you are a constitutional scholar. He is somebody who has said he believes the Bible comes first over the Constitution. I want to be clear, this is not about being a person of faith. There are many people of faith in Congress, of Democrats and Republicans. But saying that the Bible comes first over the Constitution, how problematic is that?
Well,
position second in line for the president.
Well, let's start with this. When we take our oath of office, we put our hand on the Bible and we swear to uphold the Constitution. We don't put our hand on the Constitution and swear to uphold the Bible. The Constitution is the governing document of the country. And we, of course, have a multiplicity of faiths, and people can choose their faith or no faith at all. And that's what Jefferson and Adams and Madison fought for with the American Revolution and the Declaration and the Constitution. I mean, the great breakthrough of the American Constitution was to rebel against centuries of religious conflict, the wars between the Catholics and the Protestants, and Inquisition and Crusade and witchcraft trials and all of that. They said, we want to put government on a secular principle, which is no establishment of religion, no religious test for public office, and free exercise. Everybody can worship exactly as he or she pleases. But I've got colleagues who get up. One got up not long ago and said the moral downfall of America was in 1962 with Engel versus Vitale, where the Supreme Court banned prayer in the public schools. And I had to remind him, no, the Supreme Court never banned prayer in the public schools. As long as there are pop math quizzes, there will be prayer in the public schools, right? All the Supreme Court said in Engel versus Vitale is that the government can't compel you to pray according to a script that the government writes. And that case was from New York. The suit was brought by Catholic families saying that there was a Protestant prayer that was being imposed on everybody. And of course, that's the great argument, or one of the great arguments, for the separation of church and state and no establishment of religion. What happens is one church gets control of the governmental process and then imposes its theological orthodoxy and discipline on everybody else.
And that's why it's in place. Never has there been a greater value for constitutional expertise. So thank you so much for bringing it to us.